It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at AmericasVoiceNow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. We've got a number of areas we're going to cover, not the least of which is the breaking news of the NSA's newest abuse of America. The news out this morning is that the NSA is collecting millions of email address books globally, incorporating literally tens of millions of Americans into that. We're going to get in depth into how and why they're accomplishing that. I got to tell you, folks, this is just, if this doesn't, break the ice with America, finally having an open and real discussion about these issues, I don't know that anything actually will. Our second issue is healthcare and how literally tens of thousands of jobs are essentially evaporating in the healthcare sector. There's a number of reasons for that, not the least of which is Obamacare, but also in addition to that, the cutbacks in both Medicare and Medicaid spending are directly responsible. Now, those cutbacks were in an effort to fund Obamacare. And so it's, by drawing resources away from Medicare and Medicaid in an effort to kickstart Obamacare, they have actually caused literally tens of thousands of layoffs just this year alone. I mean, we're talking more than 41,000 layoffs, folks, and we're only in October. And the plan hasn't even started yet. We're also going to talk about, in our third segment, Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder and his act of civil disobedience yesterday. I'm from the state of Missouri, and Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder, while he is a Republican, the governor of this state is a Democrat, which is kind of unusual in the sense that most states have a Democratic or have a governor and a lieutenant governor who are allied and part of the same party. In Missouri, that's different, and Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder is a Republican, and he has been very, very vocal about a number of issues, not the least of which is the recent veto or failure to override a lot of the vetoes that the governor put forth in the last session. Yesterday, he, along with a group of other individuals, staged essentially a federal protest at a national park here called Big Spring, in which they went in there and broke through the barricades and intervened and invaded the park to make a clear and definitive statement. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that with him. He's going to join us on the phone live, and that will be at the 9 o'clock hour, in our third segment. The final topic that we're going to talk about is the general decline in America. And the reason I say that, folks, is because we are clearly at a position now where this is no longer a left or a right issue. This is no longer a question of the haves and the have-nots. This is no longer a question of the black versus the white, the illegal versus the legal. All of those issues have got to be recognized for what they are, distractions. And where we now stand is a nation that is so sharply in decline, not only domestically but on an international scale, that we have to make some very, very clear and defined decisions. There's stories out about the fact that the United States, first of all, big money and international trade is looking outside of the U.S. into 2014 because they realize that, quite frankly, I guess they suppose the end is coming. The The real problem that we have here is that our nation and our government, frankly, is working actively to destroy our nation from the inside. And we're going to talk about that because I don't know how many other things can go awry here without some active participation on the part of the vast majority of the public. I mean, we're down to two choices, basically, and I'll describe those for you when we get to that segment. So let's get into our first topic, the NSA data collection, because this is an important story. It broke last night. Snowden is again responsible for this information. And basically what he's stating is that the NSA is harvesting hundreds of millions of contact lists from personal email and instant messaging services and systems from around the world. And, of course, they're trying to get around the issue of collecting U.S. information from within the U.S. So they collect this from international lists, and they collect the data from international locations. But, of course, it incorporates literally hundreds of millions of Americans as well. Now, basically, this was broken in the Washington Post, and I'll post. There's links posted up on AmericasVoiceNow.org and on our Facebook page at facebook.com/AmericasVoiceNow. Here's the problem: the NSA, in their data collection, is gathering these contact lists that are like email contact lists and contact lists from Facebook and Yahoo and Google and Hotmail and Gmail and all the others. I mean, the numbers, ladies and gentlemen, are truly staggering. They pull a single year out in this example that was shown, and this was last year now. So God only knows what they're doing right now, because this was a full year ago. And they collected 444,743 email addresses from Yahoo alone, 105,000 plus from Hotmail, 82,000 plus from Facebook, and 33,000 plus from Gmail, and 23,000 roughly from other unspecified providers. Now, this is a daily intake, folks. This is a daily record. And here's the problem. The way they're doing this is because they're barred from actually collecting this information on U.S. soil. They're having Australia do it for them. Now, I've told you about this many, many times, and I've brought it out repeatedly. The way this works is real simple. The NSA is prohibited from collecting data about Americans. The British are barred from collecting information about British citizens. And Australians are prohibited from collecting information about Australian citizens. So basically what they do is they just move the wheels on the cog one state or nation over, and we collect the information on Australian and British, and then we give that information over to them. But they can actually say with a straight face and under oath, we didn't collect any information. But it's all legalese. You know, the president has come out and said, we're not listening to your phone calls. No, that's true. We know that you're not listening. But what you are doing is you're capturing them and saving them, and then you're converting them to text, and then you're doing a scan on them for keywords, and then you're retaining them indefinitely. Right now, it's a 10-year window of retention. Hey, listen, folks, in 10 years, trust me, this will be so mainstream that no one will even question it. And so here's the problem. What we have is national governments that are so intent on destroying our own sovereignty and our own independence and freedom and liberty and privacy here that it's become a worldwide plague. And I mean the word plague with all of its implications. Because the way they're doing this is they generate these lists by capturing and when someone sends an email and they send it to multiple people, it captures all of the addresses that are sent there. So it's not just that it's going to Bob. It gets Bob and Cindy and Tom and Steve and Harry and whatever. In addition to that, these other services like Yahoo's services, Hotmail, Facebook, these are all contact lists that are friend lists and people that you're communicating. As an example with Yahoo, the reason why they're saying that was so high is because Yahoo does not encrypt the lists. Why, I cannot figure out for the life of me. Of course, yesterday they said that they're going to start now. Gee, thanks. But these are basically the inbox displays of web-based email accounts. And what they're doing is they're capturing all of this, and then they're saving it all, and they're declining to estimate how many of these are U.S. Entities. But they did not deny that it would be in the tens of millions. Now, what he says here, there's a spokesman for the NSA who came out and says, the agency is focused on discovering and developing intelligence about valid foreign intelligence targets, like terrorists, human traffickers, and drug smugglers. We are not interested in personal information about ordinary Americans. Stop right there. Let's evaluate that statement. Again, use your critical thinking skills and listen to what they're saying. Read between the lines. They're focused on discovering and developing intelligence about valid foreign intelligence targets, like terrorists, human traffickers, and drug smugglers. Well, this is the first time that we've heard human trafficking and drug smuggling being interjected into the conversation, which tells you that, again, this is not just an issue for terrorism. It is a law enforcement function. And these drug smugglers are not only foreign, they are also domestic. And these and I'm not giving any pause to these people, nor am I giving them any excuse. What I am saying is that what this tells you, irrespective of what you think of human traffickers and drug smugglers, which I have no respect for in any way, shape, or form, nor do I advocate or condone. But what I'm trying to tell you is this. We've been told all along that this was all about fighting terrorism. And now we're hearing interjected these new terms of human traffickers and drug smugglers. Now, we know for a fact that they've been giving a lot of data to the DEA because that came out in an earlier story. And so slowly but surely the truth begins to come out, you know? I mean, it's like when you sit down and you ask your 8-year-old for details on something that's occurred, and you keep pressing and pressing and pressing, and slowly but surely the whole story begins to emerge. But it takes a long time and a lot of the right questions to get there. Now, the problem here is that they are barred in many cases from gaining information in the United States legally. And yet, so what they're doing is, in order to defend this bulk collection, they are, utilizing alternative methods to go ahead and gather this information that they want. And these are entire address books. These aren't just, you see, if you store your address book in the cloud, and you do because you store your email address book in the cloud for your Gmail account, for your Outlook account, if you have an Outlook account, for Yahoo, for whatever email service you're using. All those people that you have stored in the cloud are all connected and tied to you. And I bring this back to the old argument that I've given you before when I wrote an article and I posted it up on America's Voice Now. And I want you to go back and review it again. That article was very clear about the concept here of how this works. And what this argument states is simply this. Everything is really done and built upon the 6 degrees of separation concept, which is that if you believe yourself to be innocent and you're immune from the dragnet, what you don't know can hurt you. Because if you communicate with someone who communicates with someone who communicates with someone who communicates with someone who communicates with someone else that you don't even know, and that person is a target, you are now in the circle of targeted people. And it doesn't take very long to get from 6 degrees, using the 6 degrees of separation principle and the model for that, it doesn't take long before everybody is a suspect. You see, the problem here is that, and I mean, I was reading some of the comments on this on this story at the Washington Post, and it's very interesting because a number of these, the first thing that these people say is, oh well, the NSA is collecting email addresses. Big yawn. And I mean, here's another one. I see nothing illegal in this particular post. I do wish the Post, or in this particular program, I do wish the Post could be prosecuted for leaking this. I mean, somebody responds to him and says, as you see no violation of the First Amendment, I'm not surprised that you don't care for the freedom of the press either. You got to recognize, people, that, first of all, there are people who actually agree with this. And here's another one. All this gets out of me is a big yawn. Anybody who has ever operated under the assumption that anything they say or do online is truly private is a first-class idiot. whether it is the NSA doing the monitoring or the GCHQ, that's the British NSA, or the DGSE, or Mossad or MSS, DGI or SVI, or even organized crime syndicates, the internet has been compromised for years. And while I don't disagree with that, I don't think that, that it's appropriate to sit here and just say and toss the whole thing out and say, well, it's happening. Let's just, move on. There's nothing to see here. I mean, the truth is that what we are looking at here is a wholesale and massive violation of everything that the Fourth Amendment stands for. You are entitled to have some level of privacy in your communications with those people that that you communicate and interact with, business on a business level or a personal level. But what we are looking at is a wholesale, complete disruption of that. And no, when you look at this thing in its totality, you got to ask yourself the obvious question. At the end of the day, what are they planning to do with all this data? How and what will occur with it? Because it can't possibly be used for your benefit. You see, here's the problem. America has been lulled to sleep by the largesse of free everything. Nobody wants to rock the boat and to upset their own private little nest eggs. There are plenty of people out there, some of you within the sound of my voice right now listening, who are outraged but refuse to raise the alarm and the hue and the cry. And the reason why you don't is because you're either in some way, shape, or form compromised. Whether you're on an EBT card, or you're getting some kind of assistance, or you're getting some kind of benefits, veterans benefits, or some other thing, or whether or not you work for a contractor, or your husband or your wife works for a contractor, or you see, the problem is that we have gotten to the point where the 6 degrees of separation principle is flipped and reversed. Everybody in some way, shape, or form, since 20% of America works for the federal government or the state government, 20% of the entire workforce works for government. And so when you take those 20% and you incorporate all of their family members, you're talking about almost 50% of the population has some direct involvement with the federal government and the state government. What that tells you is that we are no longer independent thinkers, because we are, for all intents and purposes, all compromised. And if you count in the people who are not employed by government, or not directly related to someone employed by government, but are on some sort of assistance and living on the largesse of the public, you pretty much have almost everybody in America. Isn't that astounding? The other problem is that 40% of the nation is on mind-altering and rewiring drugs, courtesy of pharma tyrants. And the truth is, they're willingly promoting this because it keeps everybody apathetic. I mean, there's no alarm to be raised because everybody's like, oh, ho-hum. Let me just take another Prozac, the happy pill, another Zoloft. Then you've got the Ministry of Propaganda, and basically they are redirecting anybody who actually has an inquiring mind, anyone who is utilizing intellectual curiosity and is intellectually honest, and they redirect them in some way, shape, or form to, misdirect the whole concept of there's so much distracting information. We are trying to drink from a fire hose of stimulation, right? And when I say that, I'm talking about, the reality television programming and all the news articles out there about the latest Kardashian fashion craze, or some entertainer who's got an illegitimate child, or whatever. The point is that you're being distracted away from truth. And as we stand now, I believe that the only thing that will awaken the drug-laden citizens of the United States is when blood runs in the streets. And I gotta tell you, my biggest concern is that even that won't shake them from their reverie. I fear that, because I suspect that everybody's going to be willing to go quietly into that dark night. I mean, if they weren't, why aren't they screaming bloody murder right now? The Obamacare program, the NSA, the IRS, and literally thousands of other extra-constitutional government agencies. These are all of the administrative agencies that don't have a right to exist constitutionally. They're building dossiers on every American. I know I've said that many times. And I wonder how many people are actually truly understanding of what this means. The eventual use of these dossiers will be revealed in time. I don't know what it is. But I can tell you this. It doesn't bode well for you because there's no functional value. There's no benefit that you personally will derive from all of this data being in the hands of people who don't have your best interest at heart. The Obama argument that we're not listening to your calls, all of that is merely carefully worded legalese. The proof of the fact is, and we know this to be a fact, they're not listening. But it's a legalese game of, you got to define what is. Because what they are doing, and we know this because they've exposed this, is they're converting those conversations to text, and then they're scanning them for keywords in real time. So, all right, I get it. They're not listening, quote unquote. But it doesn't mean that they're not monitoring. It's all a game. And Congress has become complicit. I don't know whatever various and nefarious and nebulous reasons they have. I'm sure some of them are true, ideological Kool-Aid drinkers. Some of them have been compromised. Some of them have been corrupted. Some of them actually just don't give a damn as long as they're getting some benefit out of it, as long as they got their job and they're guaranteed safety, as long as they're guaranteed a seat at the table, whatever phoenix rises from the ashes of liberty and freedom. And then there's that group, that small handful of patriots who are raising the hue and the cry like Paul Revere's from the rooftops. And the problem is that the nation is in a collective yawn of disinterest. There are basically two choices I see going forward. One, we can go quietly into that dark night with our eyes wide shut, praying that we aren't actually their prey. If you choose to take that route, God bless you. I don't know what to suggest, but at some point in time, I think you're going to come around to the realities of it. Two, we can utilize vast numbers and grassroots efforts to incorporate a massive peaceful civil disobedience on a national scale. The problem is that would have to take the form of national strikes where people actually put everything on the line. Their jobs, their homes, their possessions, their futures, their honor, their integrity, their ethics, their morals, and even their lives. The problem is that most Americans don't see that if they're not willing to go that route now, all of those things will be lost later anyway. This cannot end well for us. And I think most Americans just don't want to acknowledge that, the elephant is standing on our feet. And so they think they're going to hold on to all that stuff. And at some point, it's all going to be taken away anyway. And then the gnashing of teeth will begin in real time. The problem is that option 2 is unlikely at this moment. And the reason for that is what I pre-described, which was, 40% of the nation on mind-altering pharma drugs that have been pumped and drilled into us. The personal compromise of those who have something to gain by keeping their mouths shut. And the fact that, they're unwilling to accept the reality of where this is headed. So I'm going to close this segment with the obvious argument, and that is, again, I want you to remember this phrase. I've read it to you before. It's a quote from a guy named Winston Churchill. But it is so important right now. I hear politicians all the time that say, on these issues of Obamacare and the NSA and stuff like that, they all come out and they say, remember Winston Churchill, never give up, never give up, never give up, never give up. Okay, I get that. But I don't think they're sharing with you the one that really matters. Because while that's an admonition to not give up, it doesn't incorporate active participation in correcting the problem. This quote does. And here's what it says. Still, if you will not fight for the right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. There may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than live as slaves. America, right now, we have the opportunity to fight for right when we can easily win without bloodshed, when the victory is sure and not too costly. The problem is the sense of apathy, the sense of hopelessness, the mind control that is being done to you by media, by our school systems, by your neighbors and your friends who tell you, listen, you're only one person, there's nothing you can do about it. Don't agonize over it, just move along. Your churches who are refusing to discuss it. Your employers who say, listen, it's inevitable, I can't help it, we got to cut you. What you don't realize is that we haven't yet gotten to the section where all hope is lost, and we have come to the moment when you have to fight with all the odds against us and only a precarious chance of survival. We're right now between the, if you will not fight for the right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly part. That's where we are right now. And we're almost past that. The next part ought to be hearkened by every American. You may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. There may even be a worse case. And God help us if we ever get here. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than live as slaves. I pray that reality never comes to pass for us. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to take up the topic of the health care cut to tens of thousands of health employees in the nation, how patients are being forced to pay in advance before they go because the medical facilities are seeing the deductibles spread so high now, they know you'll never hit them, and how the Obamacare regulations have 30 times as many words as the actual law itself. We're talking about a staggering amount, folks. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Find us on the web at AmericasVoiceNow.org, Facebook.com/America's Voice Now, and YouTube.com/America's Voice Now. We'll be back in just a moment. Stick with us.